you, Mark, and thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to talk to you today about BIM and Lean. Mark's already introduced me, so I'll skip through that. I suppose this is going to be a talk more about BIM and how it supports Lean rather than Lean itself, but I want to make a key takeaway point for everyone today is everybody thinks BIM is about nice 3D models and software in it, but it's about information, about buildings. And information is really important. And it doesn't matter, what your role is in the industry. You need information to do your job. And in doing your job, you're producing information that other people are going to need to do their job. So, that's a key point. Information is really important. It has value. It is an asset. You can't manage a building without information. You can't effectively deliver the building without information. You can't maintain and operate it. You can't even transact in buildings without the information. So it is a valuable asset and should be looked after. The second key point I want to make is that the quality of information profoundly affects all of those things I've just spoken about. So if you have good quality information, things tend to go well. And if you have poor quality information, things tend to go not so well. And then what do you mean by quality of information? Well, what I mean about quality information is information that is digital, that can be used and reused for many purposes. It's information that's searchable, it's accessible, it's accurate, it's timely, that you have the information you need at the right time, and you get the information in a format that's useful to you, that you can use it. So I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with what I've just said there, right? Everyone agrees that. The problem is the way we understand building information in the construction industry is the exact opposite of what I've just said. It's predominantly paper-based. It's unlikely that it's accurate, and because of the way it's produced and when it's produced, it's in a very static format. It's very difficult to search or query, and in that format, it's very difficult to keep up to date. So that's the kind of problem we're having to deal with when we talk about information in the construction industry. Things don't have to be that way. And when you look at other industries and in other areas of life, we've just come to appreciate better ways of working with information. So when you want to book your next holiday, you're not sitting in the travel agents paging through a printed copy of the flight schedule of every airline that goes to your destination. You're going online, you're entering your destination, immediately you're presented with multiple options from multiple airlines, price options from different travel agencies. You make a selection, you enter your card details, and that's it. Your holiday is booked. That's just the way we expect to work with information in other areas of life. But in the construction industry, if you want to know something about a building, you've got to go spend half a day in a storeroom full of lever arch files looking for stuff, and then when you finally find it, you don't trust it anyway because you're guessing it's probably out of date. So this BIM, to me, is about the digitization of the construction industry. When we talk about an information model, I'm not talking about just a 3D, nice 3D model. We're talking about all the information that represents the built asset. So we're talking about documents, we're talking about graphical data, we're talking about non-graphical data. And just to look at what happens to that information over the life cycle of a building, we spend enormous amounts of time and money during design and construction producing lots of information. Some of it in design stage, more of it in construction stage. Lot of effort put in, and we hand all that over to a client in boxes of lever arch files or on a CD or something. And this is what happens. Over the life cycle of the building, the information enters this cycle of continuously degrading and depleting because it's in a static format that can't be kept up to date. There's no plan to keep it up to date. And so very quickly it loses its value. And obviously that's not ideal for a building owner or an asset, anybody who owns an asset. So at some point in time, you have to implement a strategy that avoids that happening. That's going to turn that around and say, we have to maintain our information about our built assets in a digital way. So you have to have a digital strategy. And all these plans are coming from best practice in asset management, ISO 55000 and various other standards we can talk about. Now, obviously, the sooner you can implement that strategy, the less it's going to cost you. In fact, if you implemented the strategy right at the beginning of a project, it would cost you nothing because people have to produce the information anyway. All you're asking them to do is produce it in a way that fits into your digital strategy. The value that that information is going to bring to your project is going to be highest the earlier you can move that line into the project. So I suppose the key point there is, start soon with your digital strategy. Don't wait until you receive the building or even into its life cycle. A lot of the discussion I find around BIM is in the design community. Architects and engineers talking about BIM as a way to produce better information. A lot of the discussion about lean is around construction, and how we deliver buildings. But it seems to me that nobody is really looking at this from the whole life cycle point of view. And so we've got to get building owners and building operators involved in this discussion. The problem starts with the way we produce information in this industry. It's predominantly paper-based, as I said, so we produce lots of drawings and specifications, and these are all separate documents that have to be manually produced, manually updated, manually coordinated. Every time you make a change, you've got to go through all those documents again and make sure that change is reflected. So it's a very time-consuming, labor-intensive process. It's prone to human error. But even with those problems of producing it, the way that information gets used by others is problematic. Because, as I said earlier, you can't search the data. You can't. It's very difficult to do analysis on all the data. It's all very manual. It creates a lot of confusion. There's a lot of people involved in the industry that don't actually understand drawings. And if you're not an architect or an engineer, it's not a very good communication tool for your clients, etc. So there's all these things are happening: misunderstanding, costly administration, delays, variations. And we're living with all these things on projects every day. All of those things, by definition, are waste. They don't add any value to the building itself. So organizations that measure these kinds of things would say that over 30% of the cost of construction is waste. That's an enormous percentage, and it's something we need to do. We need to do something about that. So I suppose BIM is a different approach to producing information. The idea is you build a virtual building in software from objects that represent their real-life counterpart. So you literally assemble the building in software. Every object is a container or a placeholder of the information about that component of the building. So you only enter that information once into one place, into the object. Now, the immediate benefit of using a BIM process is that you have this virtual building. You can look around it, you can walk around it, you can take your clients through it. You can check that things are going to work before you actually go and spend real time and money on site. Now, you can still get the traditional outputs from a BIM process. So if you need a set of drawings, or you need a schedule or details, etc., you get those, but the idea is that those are generated as a view of the model. So that's not a drawing that somebody's had to manually draft. It's a view of the model that's used for the purpose of an output. But the key thing to think about BIM is that the effort goes into creating the model and maintaining the model. So if you need to make a change in the design of the building, you can make the change once in the model, and every drawing and every schedule and every output is automatically updated. So it's a far more efficient way of working. And the next key point is that BIM is not something you add to a traditional way of working. It's an alternative methodology. So the traditional way is your intellectual productivity, productive input goes into the production of lots of documents. In BIM, that effort goes into the construction of the virtual building. You can extract documents from it, but you're putting your time and effort in a completely different place. One is a far more efficient way of working. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because what we're seeing in practice in industry is what I call pseudo-BIM. That's where the design team continue to work in a traditional two-dimensional way. They're designing in 2D drawings and documents. And then in the corner of the office somewhere, there's a guy who's frantically trying to convert everything back into a model because the client maybe asked for a model. Obviously, if you do BIM that way, You've just taken a slow, expensive, problematic process and you've added something on top of it. You've made it more expensive. You need to do BIM completely the opposite way. Use the methodology of constructing the virtual building once and using that as a way to generate outputs. So when we talk about BIM level 2, there's different levels of maturity, but effectively what it means is at level 2, each discipline is working in a separate model. Now you'd think we're building one building, why don't we just all work in one model? Obviously, that makes sense, but because of the way our contracts are written, because of the insurances we have, you have to keep a clear line of responsibility between the different disciplines. So everybody builds their element of the building in a separate model, but you can bring that together in software in what's called the federated model. And it's in that federated model environment that you can coordinate the design and check that everything's going to fit and work before you get onto the site. Also, since you have this virtual model, you can do things which you couldn't do before. For instance, you can link every object in the model to your construction program and play through a simulation on how you're going to actually construct this building in the virtual environment and look at issues of logistics, health and safety, etc., before you're on site and dealing with real problems. You can link every object in the model to a cost database and let computers do what computers do really well, which is count stuff quickly and accurately. So for better cost control. It means you need people who can work with this kind of data. You can analyze this virtual building. You can put the building in real space with real weather data, etc. You can do structural analysis. You can do energy analysis. You can do all sorts of analysis. I've seen programs that will do pedestrian movement analysis. So you can virtually work out how this building is going to function and work and perform before you actually build it and to optimize the design. And the last part of them is that you can collect within those objects all the information that a future operator is going to need to operate the building. That could be the installation date, the warranty period, etc. So the model itself becomes a very rich database of searchable, accurate information that people can actually use rather than a whole set of documents. So these different aspects of them, the 3D, 4D, 5D, the different dimensions, you'll see why these become important when you think about what it is clients want. Because I can tell you this, clients don't want BIM. Clients want better project outcomes. And by that I mean they want better buildings, built quicker and built cheaper. And everybody's thinking, well, you can't have that. You can't have all three. If you want something better, you've got to spend more time, you've got to spend more money. But if you can think about, if we can cut out some of the waste and improve the way we work and have more efficient processes, more lean processes, then maybe we can turn some of the waste, that 30% waste, back into value and quality. But these are the things that are important to clients. And if you look at the UK construction strategy targets, they want to produce 50% better buildings. And the way they're going to measure that is through carbon performance. In other words, better performing buildings. 50% quicker and 33% cheaper. So you might think, well, those are ridiculous or ambitious targets. I can tell you this, if the industry in the UK and other markets are striving towards that, and we are not, we're going to very quickly become uncompetitive in the way we work. From a client's point of view, they want to understand what it is they're getting. What's the scope of the building? They want to understand when they're going to get it. How long is it going to take to build? What's it going to cost? They're interested in the quality. Is it going to be durable? How long is it going to last? What will it cost to maintain and operate? They're really interested in value for money. And more importantly, they're interested in certainty. For a lot of clients, constructing is not their core business. And they're relying on the professional teams that they employ to help them deliver the building with certainty. And to be honest, for most clients, the process of going through construction is probably the worst thing they'll do in their lifetime, because of all the problems and the delays and the variations and every project just about ending up in court. It's not a fantastic experience. I know we in the construction industry we've learned to live with that, and it's almost challenging and fun, but it's not the way to go. What has this got to do with BIM? Well, the 3D aspects of BIM help the clients understand the scope, help everybody else understand the scope. The fact that you have a virtual building that everybody can look around, dissect, etc. Helps the understanding scope. The 4D aspects of BIM helps everybody understand the program, the time, how this is going to be delivered. The 5D aspects of BIM helps everybody understand the costs. The 6D aspects of BIM, all the analysis, is about producing better quality buildings. You analyze and you optimize to build the best solution rather than the first solution. And the 7D aspects of BIM are also a quality issue, in my opinion, in that you're delivering digital, searchable, accurate data that people can use at the end of the project. So, you can see that BIM touches on all the things that are important to clients. And I'd say, as a project team, if you're only doing 3D BIM, okay, that's fine, it's nice, you've got a 3D model and you're helping people understand the scope and coordinate the design. But if you're not doing these other aspects of BIM, 4D, 5D, 6D, then you're not really dealing with all the issues that are important to clients. So, as I said, information is really important to everyone. It doesn't matter what you do. You need information to do your job. You're producing information. Other people need your information to do their job. So, if we're going to do this in a lean and efficient way, I don't see how you can do it in a paper-based environment. So, if we look at the lean principles and apply it to how we deal with information, how do we move information from one place to another? Somebody was just telling me that the cost of printing all the drawings for the planning application for the Children's Hospital was something like 80,000 euros. Just lots of paper. What's the point? Like the council is going to receive all this paper and then scan it. Why didn't we just issue a digital file from the first thing? How we store information. Storing information in rooms full of lever arch files that are just almost useless and impenetrable. It's difficult to find information. Motion. How we work as a team. We have to print the drawings out, get around a table and look at the drawings, whereas in these virtual environments, you could have people from all around the world coming into the virtual environment and collaborating. The wait, updating information and waiting for information in a traditional 2D process is very slow, and it causes a lot of delays in the way we work. So, using a digital process will obviously help that. The over-processing. Every time you use fancy technology to produce information and then print it out on a piece of paper to hand off to the next person has to re-input the information into their fancy technology. And, you can just see there's nothing efficient or lean about the way we use information as we go through the cycles. Overproduction. We tend to produce too much information, which becomes abortive information at the end as decisions are being made. And defects, because of the slow way in which information is produced and the fact that you can't keep everything coordinated and up to date means you end up with a lot of defects within the information and resulting in physical defects on sites. And then skills. I think the people we're educating in these courses and in these universities have got better things to do than coordinate manual documents, and sit and cross-check and recheck, and you should be applying your skills to better things. So my question, if we're going to talk about lean and information, is can lean really work without BIM? Can we be efficient? Better information, in my opinion, supports the way the industry collaborates. It supports all the principles of collaboration, such as early engagement, assessment of price, because you've got digital data that you can analyze, use immediately, aligning of business objectives, etc. Under a bit of time pressure, I'll skip through these. But, doing all of that with paper documents is impossible or slow. So it all sounds good, right? What's the catch? There is a catch. Everything I've said up to this point is not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless there's a clearly defined managed process put in place that requires everyone who's participating on the project to work in this way I've just described. So we need a standard way of working. And the fortunate thing for us in Ireland is we don't have to develop these standards. So when the UK government set out their strategy 6 years ago, they've committed to developing all the standards and guidance and everything you need to to use this process. We just got to pick it up and use it. So in the words of that great 20th century philosopher, Nike, we just need to do it. Okay? Very briefly, the PAS 1192 is probably the most applicable standard for the delivery phase of projects. And it's a very simple document that sets out that a few key things have to happen. The employer has to document exactly what the information requirements are. They need to check the capability of people they're employing on projects to work this way. You have to put a few commercial things in place, like you've got to make BIM contractual, so people are legally obliged to participate this way. You've got to appoint an information manager to oversee the whole process, some issues and guidance. You've got to put together a digital plan of work. When you're tendering on projects, whether you're tendering for design or construction, you need to prepare a pre-contract BIM execution plan to set out how you're going to deliver to those employers' information requirements. Once you get appointed to the team, you sit together as a team and you prepare what's called the post-contract BIM execution plan, which is a document which sets out how the team is actually going to deliver to the employer's information requirements. You've got to set up a common data environment, a central repository of all the information that's carefully managed, and ultimately you've got to set out the deliverables, the digital deliverables of a project. That's all the document says. It's not that complicated. It's not rocket science, I suppose, is what I'd like to say. Like, a lot of people are making a big fuss about it, and I know there's a lot of terminology in the documents, but effectively what it's setting out is doing what you should have been doing anyway. You should be setting out the requirements and responsibilities of a project. You should be setting out how you're going to deliver it before you actually do it. You've got to make it contractual. You've got to put someone in charge. You've got to check that everyone has the capability. You've got to keep all the information in a central place and make sure that the data is well structured. That's all it is. And number one rule, avoid pseudo-BIM if at all possible. So, there's lots of acronyms to learn, but I mean, you get through them very quickly. There's lots of tools available. The RAI have put two documents together to help industry, a template EIR and BEP. In the UK, they've developed a free toolkit for people to do their digital plan of works. There's some documents that the Construction Industry Council have put together in terms of the scope of service for information management, etc., and some other template documents. So everything we need is there. We've just got to use it. When you look at the things you need to know and do to be BIM Level 2 compliant, what you realize very quickly is this has got nothing to do with software. Well, not nothing, but only the last few things involve software. It's a project management issue. It's about how we run projects effectively. And the second last thing, for most people, it's enough to have the ability to open and look at the model, interrogate the model with a free viewer. There's only a small amount of people that are actually going to produce the information at the end of the day. So it's sort of something that everybody has to spend like weeks learning how to use BIM software. So in summary, the key point is that this is a process. It involves software, but it's not about software. It's not about buying software. It's about streamlining the way we work, so being more lean about the way we produce and share information, coming up with better quality information. It's all about the information at the end of the day and how that's used in the life cycle. Just two slides to quickly make you aware. In Europe, there's a lot happening. They've changed the procurement directives to allow for BIM. There's a European task group which is looking at that whole issue of BIM for public procurement. There's a European standards group that's developing standards in conjunction with international standards groups. I suppose, to me, these things are either an opportunity or a threat. The opportunity, if we become good at this in Ireland, is that we can win work all over the world because it's becoming a standard way of working. The threat is if we don't become good at it, people will be coming and taking the work here because they'll be able to deliver quicker, cheaper, better buildings. And the go-to place, I suppose, if you want to get to know anything about BIM in Ireland, is the Construction IT Alliance. It's a multidisciplinary group of people who are interested in how technologies are used in construction. It's well supported by industry stakeholders. There's about 7,000 people on the LinkedIn group having discussions about this. There's 9 regional groups, including Galway. There's going to be a BIM gathering conference at the end of this year. CETA is the Secretariat of the National BIM Council, and also we're now engaging with the National Standards Authority of Ireland. So that's what it is. If anybody needs help and support, that's what our company offers. Thank you.